Hope Library. Really excited. I know I always say this, but I am really excited of our next guest. You have probably seen him in our library before. If you haven't, definitely go back and watch some of his stuff. Today we have Raun Kaufman. He is the author of Autism Breakthrough and the co-creator of the ACT protocol, which we're going to hear more about today, the ACT protocol. I'm so excited about this. So today we're going to be talking about the neural crash, solve the real cause of crises, meltdowns, anxiety, and extreme behaviors. Say that 3 times fast. All right, so we're here today. We're super excited. Welcome, Raun. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. I'm super excited for this conversation.
Well, every time I talk to you, you always have the best titles of stuff, but I'm like always tongue-tied. So I'm so excited that I got it right somewhat, but I'm excited because this is something that all parents really need to, they really need help with, but often we don't talk about it enough, right? So often on the news or on Facebook, we're always putting all the pretty things, right? It's like the Hallmark Channel. We're never really talking about what we live day in and day out, of our fears, of things that we watch our kids struggle with, of all ages. And I love that you and your co-creator have created this thing called the ACT protocol, which I think is so needed. And again, not talked about enough. Nobody wants to talk about meltdowns or extreme behaviors or, crisis. They always want to talk about, oh, my kid did this or my kid did that, which is great. But in order for the kid to be able to do this or that, we have to work through some of the stuff that we really don't like to look at. So thank you so much, for doing what you do and for being here today to help our families.
Yeah, no problem. I mean, that's actually what you're saying is so true in terms of what we do and do not talk about. And that's why by the way, I co-created with my colleague, Kate C. Wild. She's the author of a number of books. We've worked together for a long time, but that's why we created the ACT protocol. It stands for Autism Crisis Turnaround. And it was this, we felt like there was this area that people were really struggling with and like they either weren't getting help or they were getting help that ends up being super counterproductive and worsening the thing that people are trying to help. So that we wanted to really address that head on.
Well, before we start, I know you have a pretty remarkable story and your own journey in history. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I'll just say real quick. So for anyone who's listening, I've been where your loved ones are, whether you might have a 5-year-old, you might have a 25-year-old, but when I was a young boy, I was diagnosed with severe autism. I had no language or communication. I was very much in my own world, and my parents really did something amazing with me and something really different. They called it the Sunrise Program, and they spelled it SON because I was their son, and they worked with me for a little over 3 years, and I grew and blossomed in a whole bunch of different ways. I'm this guy you see right now, and really I went on to do all these things that my parents were promised I would never do. From I travel the world and do lectures, at least before COVID, to, yes, I am married. I have a wonderful wife named Dilma. And I just really feel grateful that, I really got this unique opportunity. I have a unique set of parents. And so for me, this isn't like an academic subject or a career subject. It's something super personal. That's why I wrote my book. And ultimately, the reason why Kate and I created the ACT protocol was because I just felt like this is just yet another area where our loved ones are just not getting help that can really work with them instead of against them.
So you say that our loved ones that are on the spectrum, I've heard you say this, are having neuro crashes. What is a neuro crash?
Yeah, well, this is super important because what's actually happening is that, okay, so let me just define a term real quick before I do that, which is a term that we could call the imposed situation. And that's not complicated. It's just basically the environment or circumstance that our loved one on the spectrum are being exposed to, usually without their say-so. So where a neurocrash comes in is it's when the imposed situation that our loved one's exposed to overwhelms their brain so that their normal coping mechanisms shut down. And then that manifests a lot of times in behaviors that a lot of neurotypical people see as very extreme. It can be yelling, screaming, hitting, biting. It could be swearing and saying, I hate you and hope you die. It could be just experiencing deep and intense anxiety or constant fights with siblings or a really difficult time in school such that maybe they even get kicked out. Oftentimes this will also happen around deep transitions in life, like puberty or the death of a loved one or moving. So these are manifestations of a neurocrash, but again, it's the neuro crash that's the thing that's causing that manifestation. And then what we try and talk about is like, hey, so then what's causing these neuro crashes? Because if we can really identify what's causing them, we can circumvent them before they happen.
I love that. Now, when it comes to crisis, meltdowns, anxiety, all of that stuff, I feel like, often, you're blaming the wrong thing, right? So when we're looking at that environment, right? Where do parents churn? Because I know for me with my son, obviously, my son, right? We've been friends for anyone watching or listening. Ron and I have been friends for, I think, almost 15 plus years, right? So
yeah, more than 15 years.
Wow, time goes by fast. But I know as parents, it's very challenging. It's very challenging because you feel like you're walking on eggshells often. You're like, okay, they're doing good. I don't want to rock the boat. I'm like so afraid they're going to have this meltdown. And I feel like for parents, and I can speak for myself at least, you almost get this PTSD thing around your children having a meltdown and when I talk about a meltdown, this isn't like a normal tantrum of, normal, and I hate to use the word normal, but like a neurotypical 2-year-old or 3-year-old. We're talking like aggressive, biting, kicking, putting holes in walls, breaking things, to the point where you're scared. And I've been in that situation. I've been in that situation where I've been scared of my own son. And, people know my story. They know that we're doing much better now. So I'm very grateful for that. However, I know what that feels like. And so you often blame yourself too. Like you're like, oh gosh, if I only wouldn't have pushed them, if I only wouldn't have done this, or if I only wouldn't have done that. And there's this whole kind of guilt thing around it. And then you end up walking on more eggshells. And here's the thing I've learned, and I'm excited to hear your take on this, is that it doesn't matter what you do. Like you could be perfect and do A, B, C, D exactly the same way you do it the day before and the day after, and it can still happen. And that I always say, you just don't know what's going to happen. It's like with autism, it's unpredictable sometimes. And so, when you're helping families out there, when you're coming to these crises, right? Like, do you ever see families that are, blaming themselves and it's hard to understand like there's actual tools out there that can help them?
Well, they're kind of caught between a rock and a hard place, the families, because either you're absolutely right. I've talked to a lot of parents who are blaming themselves. If I was just a better parent, if I did this differently, this would be different. So there's that piece, right? That's part of, I would call blaming the wrong thing, right? Then there's a lot of, on the other side, probably a lot of reason why this happens actually, is that a lot of these parents are told, in a sense, your child is the problem. No one says those exact words, but like, they have a behavior problem that they really needs fixing, and they need to learn they can't behave that way. Or they get told that the autism's the problem. Like it's just, that's the issue. So what we really feel like we've seen, Kate and I have seen this for so many years, is that actually all those things, they end up blaming things that are the effect instead of the cause. And so we spend a lot of time putting out, not we, but people putting out fires, trying to stop the walking on eggshells. That's a great way of saying it. And then ultimately the root cause never gets addressed. And so what we feel like is happening is like, okay, so remember we were saying these neuro crashes are happening from these imposed situations that overwhelm the child or adult's brain. And by the way, really, I mean child or adults. We just did a course on the ACT protocol back in September, and most of the people in there had sons and daughters who were in their 20s and 30s. There were some parents of 11-year-olds and one parent of a 7-year-old, but there was a lot of parents of older people with autism. So this really can affect that. And obviously that's even more of an issue because they're going to be stronger than a 7-year-old, right? Mm-hmm. And yes, there are some parents that are scared. I for their own safety, I really get that. Actually just got off the phone with a parent in that situation. And so if we want to stop blaming the wrong thing, it means we got to go back to the cause. So what we see is happening is ultimately there's like a buildup of certain imposed situations that have to do with causing sensory overload for that person, And so that eventually we say they hit their sensory wall. We often refer to it as S4, that our loved ones have S4, super sensitive sensory systems. And so it builds up. It's not like everyone wants to think there's like one trigger, but actually what often's happening is it's not one thing, it's all the things. And there's things building up around that are increasing the sensory load. So that's one thing. Then because our loved ones have this heightened need for predictability and control, that's often being disrupted and violated unintentionally throughout the day by different people and different events. So then they're getting not only closer to their sensory wall, but closer to their control wall. And then on top of all of that, because they relate to people differently, they're often not met where they are. And so there's a trust deficit that the very people who can most help them, who's like all of us, are often met with resistance because there's this trust deficit. So then eventually that builds up. Again, it doesn't happen all at once, but it builds up. So eventually they're like an inch away from their control wall or their sensory wall. They hit that wall, boom, they have a neuro crash. But if we can actually address what are all those contributing factors, which is what we do in the ACT protocol, we're saying, hey, we have 5 turnaround tools that work on pulling all of these down so that you can circumvent these kind of things before they happen.
Well, and let's talk a little bit about the importance. I like how you guys say SOS. So let's talk about the importance, which I think ties in great with, not hitting or trying to not have them hit the wall, right? Because they're so close. Let's talk about the importance of recognizing SOS before it's too late, right? Because I know a lot of parents, they just don't recognize that. And can you explain that?
Yeah, this is really important too. Actually, so when I say there's 5 turnaround tools of the ACT protocol, actually the very first one is getting really good at recognizing SOS. We actually call that skill of getting better and better at it socioception. It's just basically getting better and better at recognizing these things. SOS stands for signals of stress. And, basically our loved ones on the spectrum, listen, I know you know this, but really, they don't want to have a neuro crash any more than you don't want them to have a neuro crash. That's why it really disturbs me when these are called behavioral issues. It's not like, I think I'll smack someone and break a window today, right? They're doing this because they're in a world that makes it impossible for them to function. So ultimately, they're doing a bunch of things to try and they're white knuckling it, trying not to hit that wall, trying not to have the neuro crash, right? So that's why it's so important to recognize these SOS. Now, there's some SOS that people can recognize because they happen like 5 seconds before. If a child or adult is holding their ears or they're all raising their fist, okay, fair enough. But there's ones that happen 10 minutes, 20 minutes, an hour before that you can start to notice. And they're much more subtle. They can be even things like tightening of the jaw or squinting the eyes or making fists, not making fists to punch, but like just making fists at their side, changes in breathing. There's all different, even doing a repetitive behavior, but doing it with increasing intensity, right? Now these, let's take that for just a quick second. So those kind of behaviors that people call stims, they're actually the child or adult trying not to have the neuro crash, trying to cope and process. So when those get more intense, it means they're having to try harder because they're getting closer. So we not only often don't take away what's causing this, but then sometimes we try and stop them from doing the very coping mechanism that's the only thing standing between them and a neuro crash. So yes, recognizing these SOS are absolutely crucial.
Well, as these parents are listening, right, I know in my head, I'm like, gosh, I wish, every parent had this kind of handbook, right? It's like, okay, this is happening. Let me look. Okay. SOS. It's like, you need a life jacket. You need a life vest. You need the lifesaver that goes out to save you. And, instead of having to walk on eggshells or be so afraid, I love that you and Kate have created this protocol. I think it's so needed. And again, as I said in the beginning of this talk, it's something that many of us don't talk about. So I absolutely love and just so grateful that you guys have done this. So for someone who wants help with this, you say that there's 3 steps. Can you tell us what those are?
Yeah, and it's really simple. Well, first of all, someone could just go to our website, which is just autismcrisisturnaround.com, right? Just autismcrisisturnaround.com. There's some information there. Step 1 is actually a free video that they can sign up to get. It doesn't cost a penny, and it's a more detailed, even more detail than we've gotten into today, really dives into what neurocrashes are, what's causing them, et cetera. Then step 2, they would sign up. It's basically it's like an online go at your own pace course that gets them, it sort of lowers the temperature of things. It doesn't solve all the problems, but it gets them ready. And then the final thing is the thing that Kate and I hold every once in a while. So for instance, in November 13th and 14th of 2021 on a Saturday and Sunday. All day we're having a live Zoom course that's called the ACT Live Rescue Course. And that's a live course, of course. And
Wait, Ron, you
Yeah.
you kind of paused there for a second for those that might have missed that. What is the course called again?
Oh, did I cut out? Oh, I'm
Yeah,
so
you cut out.
sorry.
That's right. So guys,
Yeah, sorry about that.
we're real time, guys. So when you're watching this,
Yes. Oh my gosh. Thank you for stopping me.
yeah. So just let's repeat that again. So where's the course and how do they find that?
Yeah, no problem. So did you catch my first two steps?
I did. Yes.
Okay. So yeah, the third one's just called the ACT Live Rescue Course. And it's basically, it's a live Zoom course, right? That people can take. It's all day Saturday and Sunday. The next one is coming up November 13th and 14th of 2021. But basically, so we spent a 2-hour class each with lots of breaks on each of these 5 turnaround tools. And I just want to say one thing about that, because you can go to the website, by the way, you can sign up for this. If you actually scroll to the bottom, there's a choice where you can sign up for step 2 and 3 at once, and then you get step 2 for free. So, because we actually want everybody to do the whole thing, so it will help them. But it's not a long-term program, it's a short-term protocol. So the whole idea is you learn this, then you spend like 2, maybe 3 weeks just implementing these things. And it can really, I'm not going to say it's easy because it's not, but it can work really quickly.
So you're just because you cut out for just a quick second again, I'm not sure why, but you said it's not a long-term program. Is that what you were saying?
Yeah, it's not a long-term program. It's a short-term protocol. So the idea is you learn this, you go implement it for 2, maybe 3 weeks is what I was saying. And it's like I said, it takes some effort. It takes some doing. I don't want to make it like it's magic and it's super easy. It takes some effort, but it takes short-term effort. That's what's cool about it, because the turnaround can happen pretty darn quickly if we're really hitting these on all these 5 cylinders.
I love it. I'm just so excited for the families out there. I love that, like I said, you guys brought this to light, right? Like there's so many families out there that I know that are listening or watching going, yeah, it's great. When you talk about victories, and all of our kids have victories, so we don't want to forget those. But again, what do we do when they're in the mode of where we just feel helpless? And it's, I think all of us wish we had, like, I always think of like the bat signal. Like I wish I had, like, I could put the bat signal up, right? And say, hey, I need some help, and I feel like having this ACT protocol is like putting your bat signal up, where
Yes.
it's like, you guys are there. You're there to listen. You're there to understand. I love that you've kind of created your own little group of people that are doing this. And, I love it. So if I haven't said I loved it enough, there you go. I just know what that feels like. And it doesn't feel like that long ago. And for me, when puberty hit with us, it was not a fun thing. And for people that know me, they know what I'm trained in, they know what I've been around, they know, I'm supposed to know how to do all that, right? And yet I didn't know what to do. I was really lost and really scared. And so, luckily things started kind of clicking, but gosh, if I had the bat signal or the SOS, I would have been like pushing, I'm thinking back when I was younger, you'd watch like the old Batmans, right? And they had like their red phone. I think it was red, and they picked it up, but it was like, I wish we had one of those phones in our house where, like, at any moment when there's an emergency, you could like pick it up and be like, help, I need help. And so I just commend you guys for, talking about something that's not really that easy, and always not our favorite topic, but we can get them through this. My gosh, imagine the life and the quality of life that our families can have. And that's really what it's about. It's about having the best quality of life, being able to have that relationship with your child of any age. And really, because again, I've lived it, not being afraid of your child, because I know that they're not doing it on purpose. And I get teary-eyed thinking about it, because I remember my son, like when he would come out of it, it would be like, oh, mommy, I love you, mommy. And like, I'm sorry, mommy. Or sometimes it would act like he didn't even know what had happened sometimes. And so I truly do not believe our kids are doing this on purpose. And so I think that's the hardest thing that many of us are facing. So anyways, before I start getting all teary-eyed on this, thank you again, Raun. Thank you to your partner, your co-creator, I should say, Kate. And gosh, I'm just excited. I hope you come back and we talk more about this protocol and different ways that we can help these families. So thank you for being here today.
You're very welcome. You're very welcome.
And thank you all for watching. Until next time. Bye, guys.